Some movies don't just entertain, they predict the future. They push boundaries, redefine genres, and leave audiences scratching their heads, only to be appreciated decades later. Today, we're diving into 5 brilliant movies that were way ahead of their time. Films that were misunderstood, ignored, or criticized upon release, but are now considered groundbreaking masterpieces. Let's begin. Kicking off our list is Metropolis, 1927, one of the earliest and most influential sci-fi films ever made. Directed by Fritz Lang, this silent-era masterpiece envisioned a future dominated by towering skyscrapers, oppressive industries, and class warfare. Sound familiar? That's because its themes have inspired countless sci-fi stories, from Blade Runner to The Matrix. Metropolis introduced a fully realized dystopian world decades before Orwell's 1984. Its special effects, set designs, and even the concept of a robotic AI, Maria, were revolutionary. Yet, when it was released, it was a box office disappointment, with critics calling it too ambitious and overly exaggerated. Today, it's hailed as one of the greatest films ever made. At number 4, we have Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. Released in 1968, this film was unlike anything audiences had seen before. It was slow, methodical, and filled with surreal imagery that confused many viewers. Some even walked out of theaters. But 2001 wasn't just a sci-fi film. It was a cinematic experience. It tackled AIHAL 9000, space travel, human evolution, and existentialism in a way that was almost prophetic. NASA scientists later praised its accuracy, and the film influenced everything from Star Wars to Interstellar. It took years for people to truly grasp its genius, but now it's considered one of the greatest films of all time. Next up is John Carpenter's The Thing. When it first hit theaters in 1982, it was a disaster. Critics slammed it for being too gory and too bleak. Plus, it had the misfortune of releasing just weeks after E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which offered a much friendlier take on aliens. But looking back, The Thing was a masterpiece of suspense, horror, and groundbreaking practical effects. Its themes of paranoia and mistrust resonate even more today. And those terrifying creature transformations? Still horrifying, even by modern standards. Over time, The Thing earned its cult status, now regarded as one of the greatest horror films ever made. At number 2, we have Brazil, 1985, directed by Terry Gilliam. Imagine a world where paperwork is more powerful than people, and endless bureaucracy controls every aspect of life. Sound eerily familiar? That's the brilliance of Brazil. This film was a satirical look at an Orwellian future filled with absurd humor and dark political commentary. But when it was released, studios hated it. They even tried to change the ending to make it more audience-friendly. Critics were divided, and mainstream audiences didn't know what to make of it. Yet today, Brazil is seen as a chillingly accurate depiction of government overreach, corporate control, and surveillance culture. More relevant now than ever. Finally, at number 1, we have Blade Runner, 1982. Ridley Scott's cyberpunk masterpiece was a complete game-changer. But when it first came out, critics dismissed it as a style over substance, and it flopped at the box office. People expected a Star Wars-like sci-fi film, not a slow, philosophical meditation on what it means to be human. But over the years, Blade Runner became one of the most influential sci-fi films ever. Its depiction of a dystopian future, artificial intelligence, and corporate dominance feels more realistic now than it did in 1982. It paved the way for Cyberpunk, inspired The Matrix, Ghost in the Shell, and even modern AI discussions. It was so ahead of its time that audiences had to catch up. There you have it, 5 brilliant movies that were way ahead of their time. Each one pushed the boundaries of storytelling, technology, and themes that only grew more relevant with time. If you haven't seen these yet, now's the perfect time to experience them. Verheidert.